Rugby Expo 2012 with Bill Beaumont, chairman of the Rugby Football Union, who's just opened day two. Bill, in a long career as a player and as an administrator in rugby, you've seen the most tremendous change. What are the most profound differences between rugby today and rugby when you first started playing?
I think the biggest difference would have been in '95 when the game went professional. That having always been brought up in the amateur game, and to see now how players look upon it as a job, and that was something that we never did. It became obsessional as an amateur. You trained hard, but it was never really specific, the training that you did. Whereby now, then you've got players, almost like soccer, that having to make decisions at 16, 17, do I go as a full-time player? And somebody in rugby, it's not necessarily like soccer, that you might have somebody who matures early as a 16-year-old and is outstanding. But by the time he gets to 20, everybody's caught him up. So there are some difficult decisions to be made. And actually, there is a big scrap heap of players who don't actually make it. And the important thing is to actually get them off this scrap heap and keep them playing rugby. Because just because they don't make it to professional doesn't mean they failed.
Yes, and they can still be part of the rugby community even as ex-players.
Absolutely, and players, and realise that if they play in the national leagues, it's a pretty good standard, and you have a bit of fun as well.
Yes. How difficult is it? Rugby has very strong values. They go right the way from the grassroots of the game to the very top. But how difficult is it to maintain those values as central to the sport in the professional era?
I think it's more difficult at the top end. It makes no difference down the game. I wouldn't like to see where our players question the referee's decisions, for instance. I think the one uniqueness about rugby is that the referee says, keep your trap shut, back 10 yards, you do it, and you keep going back 10 yards. And I wouldn't like to see players, and I have seen it creeping in, will try and influence a referee's decision, pointing if somebody's offside, brandishing the yellow card and the red card. I wouldn't like to see that coming into our game.
Okay. Now, these are particularly exciting times for rugby in England. Last weekend, Twickenham was sold out for a game against a second-tier country for the first time in history.
Yeah.
The top clubs have just signed a major new media deal.
Yeah.
And the World Cup is coming this way for the second time in 2015. What's the opportunity for English rugby?
It's probably a once-in-a-generation or a couple of generations opportunity to showcase the game and show what's good about our game. What we don't want to do is suddenly get to the 1st of January 2016 and it's gone. What's our legacy? The legacy, number one, has to be in coaching. Yeah, we have to improve the coaching at every single rugby club. It's not a coincidence New Zealand are probably the best in the world simply because their coaching is probably better. And so we've got to improve that. We've got to help clubs with facilities. So whether it's a 3G pitch or whether it's floodlights or whatever it is, as a union, we have to do that so that they can use their clubs 355 days a year. But if you've got a club and you've got no floodlights, well, where do you train? So nobody goes to the club during the midweek, nobody drinks over the bar, there's loss of revenue. We've got to make the clubs more attractive, whether that's capital investment. I went down to Dorking Rugby Club. They got a grant about £200,000 from the RFU and the RFU Trust, and they got some money from the FA as well. Built a fantastic club out, so people use that as a pub. They will go there and feel comfortable, and you take your wife down there, you're quite happy going there, rather than some breeze-blocked place with no sort of atmosphere. I'm not saying that's what Dorking was like before, but I never went there before, but I know. But this is the example that we need to do. So to keep people in the clubs.
And making them a real heart of the community.
Yeah, that's right. As I alluded to, the drive room, fantastic setup. You know, it was unbelievable the amount of people that came down to that.
Great. Now, I need to congratulate you also on winning the Outstanding Contribution Award at the Rugby Expo Awards last night. How has your experience been at Rugby Expo?
I think it's been tremendous. I've known John and Tony for a long time, and I think to put something like this together, rugby is always conservative with a sort of probably a large C, and I think the main thing that they've done is actually got buy-in from the major shareholders. The major shareholders, the four home unions, obviously Premier Rugby as well, you know, and to get them all here and basically showcase the game with kit manufacturers, and you can go and Mr. Mallinson will sort your turf out, and you know, somebody will sort your pitch covers out. These are important aspects of our game.
Great. Bill Beaumont, thanks very much indeed.